The wine glasses clinked together with a crystalline sound that seemed to hang in the air of the dimly lit restaurant. My fingers trembled slightly as I arranged them on the pristine white tablecloth, each one exactly 2 inches from the edge, just as Mr. Moretti insisted. The restaurant was empty now, the last customers having left 20 minutes ago, but we were preparing for tomorrow's private event, some business gathering that had the entire staff on edge. Elena, those glasses better be perfect. Mr. Moretti's guests don't tolerate anything less than perfection. Marco, the floor manager, hovered behind me, his breath smelling of cigarettes and the cheap coffee he drank by the gallon. I nodded without looking up. After 3 years of working at Rosso Scuro, I knew the standards better than anyone. I'd started as a dishwasher and clawed my way up to waitress, and I wasn't about to let anyone question my dedication. "They're perfect," I murmured, adjusting the final glass. My black uniform was damp with sweat beneath the arms despite the restaurant's aggressive air conditioning. Something about tomorrow's event had everyone walking on eggshells. "Who's coming tomorrow anyway?" I asked, trying to sound casual as I straightened up, my lower back aching from bending over the tables for the last hour. Marco's eyes darted around the empty restaurant before he leaned in. "Vittorio Castellano, and apparently, he specifically requested this venue." My heart seized in my chest, and the room seemed to tilt slightly. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself, hoping Marco wouldn't notice how the color had drained from my face. "The Vittorio Castellano?" I whispered, although I knew the answer. There was only one Vittorio Castellano in Chicago, the man whose name was spoken in hushed tones, the man who owned half the city without his name appearing on a single deed. The man who had no idea he had a 5-year-old daughter with my eyes and his stubborn chin. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Marco frowned, studying my face. "Just tired," I managed, forcing a smile. "Long shift." Marco grunted, apparently satisfied with my explanation. "Well, get some rest tonight. Tomorrow will be all hands on deck, and I need you sharp. Castellano tips well, but he's also known for having people disappeared over a wrong wine pairing." He was exaggerating, but not by much. The rumors about Vittorio were numerous and varied, but they all shared one common thread: cross him, and you'd regret it. I'd known this 6 years ago when I'd met him at his nephew's wedding. I'd been 22, working as a server for the catering company, bright-eyed and naive despite my hardscrabble upbringing. And he'd been magnetic. I finished my shift in a daze, muscle memory carrying me through the closing duties while my mind raced with panic. 6 years ago, I'd spent 3 intoxicating months as Vittorio Castellano's mistress before discovering I was pregnant. And when I'd realized what kind of life awaited any child born into his world, I'd done what I thought was best. I'd disappeared, telling him through a tear-soaked phone call that I'd lost the baby before changing my number and moving to the other side of the city. For 6 years, I'd lived with the lie. For 6 years, I'd raised Sophia alone, working double shifts and sleeping on a pull-out couch in our tiny one-bedroom apartment so she could have the actual bedroom. For 6 years, I'd convinced myself that Vittorio had forgotten me, just another brief diversion in a life full of power, luxury, and danger. And tomorrow, he would walk into this restaurant, and I would have to serve him wine and pretend we were strangers. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned on the lumpy pull-out couch, my mind cycling through scenarios, each worse than the last. By the time my alarm blared at 5:30 a.m., my eyes were gritty and my head pounded. "Mommy?" Sophia's sleepy voice called from the bedroom doorway. She stood there in her favorite unicorn pajamas, dark curls wild around her heart-shaped face. Vittorio's face, in miniature. "Hey, sweetheart." I forced brightness into my voice as I padded over to her. "You're up early." She rubbed her eyes with small fists. "I had a dream about Daddy." My heart stuttered. "What do you mean? What kind of dream?" Sophia shrugged, the guileless gesture of a child who doesn't understand the weight of her words. "I don't know. He was tall, and he picked me up really high." She stretched her arms toward the ceiling. "Up to the clouds." I swallowed hard. Sophia knew her father wasn't in the picture. I'd told her he had to go away before she was born, that he lived far away now. It wasn't entirely a lie. The emotional distance between the Vittorio I'd known and the man he truly was stretched wider than any physical miles. "That sounds like a nice dream," I managed. "Come on, let's get you ready. Mrs. Patel is watching you today, remember?" The morning passed in a blur of routine tasks, braiding Sophia's hair, making her favorite peanut butter toast cut into triangles, no crusts, mommy, packing her backpack with the coloring books and crayons she'd need for the day at our neighbor's apartment. All the while, dread pooled in my stomach like lead. "Be good for Mrs. Patel," I told Sophia, as I dropped her off, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I might be home late tonight." "Because of the special dinner?" she asked, already eyeing Mrs. Patel's granddaughter, who was setting up a board game on the living room floor. "That's right," I said. "Very important customers." Mrs. Patel, a kindly widow who had become something of a surrogate grandmother to Sophia, gave me a knowing nod. "Don't worry, Elena. We'll be fine. You just focus on earning those big tips, if only big tips were my biggest concern." The restaurant hummed with tense energy as the staff prepared for the evening ahead. Fresh flowers had been delivered, blood-red roses and white lilies arranged in crystal vases that probably cost more than my monthly rent. The private dining room gleamed under the chandeliers, the table set for 12 with the finest china and silver. "Elena." Marco snapped his fingers in front of my face. "Focus. I'm assigning sections, and you're on the private dining room." My stomach dropped. "The private room? But Maria usually handles the VIPs, and Maria called in sick. Food poisoning." His eyes narrowed. "Unless you don't think you can handle it?" I could feel the eyes of the other servers on me. This was the most lucrative assignment. The tips alone could cover 2 months of Sophia's daycare, and turning it down would raise questions I couldn't answer. "No, I can handle it," I said, straightening my shoulders. "Of course I can." "Good. They arrive at 8. The wine is already decanting in the cellar. Brunello for the table, and a special bottle of Barolo for Castellano himself. Don't mix them up." The hours seemed to both crawl and race by. I found myself obsessively checking my appearance in the bathroom mirror. The severe black dress that was our uniform suddenly seemed too tight, too revealing. I'd pulled my honey brown hair back into a neat bun, applied minimal makeup to highlight my green eyes, Sophia's eyes, my mother's eyes, but nothing could hide the pallor of my skin or the tension in my jaw. At 7:45, I took my position in the private dining room, hands clasped behind my back, trying to control my breathing as I listened to the muted sounds of the first arrivals in the main restaurant. Car doors slamming outside, the low murmur of masculine voices, the distinctive click of expensive shoes on marble, and then the door to the private dining room swung open, and time seemed to stop. He entered first, as befitted his status. 6 years had barely touched him. His black hair was still thick, though now threaded with distinguished silver at the temples. His face remained handsome in that stern, almost brutal way that had always made my breath catch. The strong jaw now sporting a neatly trimmed beard, the aquiline nose, the dark eyes that missed nothing. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit with a crisp white shirt and a blood-red tie, the only adornment a gold signet ring on his right hand. Vittorio Castellano filled the room with his presence, just as he always had. Behind him filed in his entourage, men in expensive suits, their eyes constantly scanning the room, hands never far from the bulges beneath their jackets. I recognized a few faces from years ago, though I doubted they would remember the waitress who had briefly caught their boss's attention. I kept my eyes downcast, the perfect picture of a deferential server, but I could feel the weight of his gaze sweeping the room. For one terrible moment, I thought he might recognize me immediately. But he moved to the head of the table without pause, his men arranging themselves in what was clearly a predetermined order of importance. "Good evening, gentlemen," I said, my voice remarkably steady despite the thundering of my heart. "Welcome to Rosso Scuro. May I bring you the wine while you settle in?" There was a murmur of assent, but I didn't dare look directly at Vittorio. Instead, I moved to the sideboard where the wine awaited, my hand surprisingly steady as I poured the rich red liquid into the waiting glasses. As I began to circle the table, placing each glass with precision, I could feel Vittorio's attention sharpening. I saved his for last, setting down the special Barolo with my eyes fixed on the tablecloth. "Thank you," he said, his voice a deep rumble that sent electricity down my spine. The same voice that had once whispered passionate promises in my ear. The same voice that had argued with me over baby names in another lifetime. Not knowing the conversation was purely hypothetical on my part. I made the mistake of looking up, and our eyes met. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. No recognition. Just the polite dismissal of a powerful man acknowledging a servant. Then his eyes narrowed infinitesimally, his head tilting slightly as he studied my face. I watched the subtle shift of expressions. Confusion, disbelief, and then something darker, more dangerous. "Do I know you?" he asked, his voice cutting through the conversations around the table, silencing them instantly. My throat closed up. My carefully rehearsed denial died on my lips as his gaze intensified, stripping away the years, the carefully constructed walls, the lies. "Elena?" he said, and the single word dropped into the silence like a stone into a still pond. The wine glass slipped from my suddenly nerveless fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor in a spray of crimson liquid that splashed across my shoes and the hem of my dress. The crash seemed to echo in the frozen silence of the room, and in that moment, as Vittorio Castellano rose slowly to his feet, his dark eyes never leaving mine, I knew with absolute certainty that my carefully constructed life was about to shatter just as completely as that glass. "Everyone out," Vittorio said, his voice deceptively soft. The command rippled through the room like an electric current. Chairs scraped against the floor as his men stood without question or protest. Within seconds, they had filed out of the room, closing the door behind them with a gentle click that somehow sounded as final as a prison gate slamming shut. I remained frozen, red wine seeping into my shoes, the shards of broken glass glittering at my feet like tiny daggers. My gaze darted to the door, a futile instinct, as two of his largest men now undoubtedly stood guard outside. 6 years, Vittorio said, circling the table with measured steps, his movements fluid and controlled like those of a predator. 6 years without a word. And here you are, serving wine in my favorite restaurant. He stopped a few feet away from me. "How long have you worked here, Elena?" The way he said my name, half caress, half accusation, made my skin prickle. 3 years, I whispered, hating the tremor in my voice. 3 years, he repeated, his Italian accent thickening slightly as it always did when he was angry. "And in all that time, you never thought to mention that you were alive and well in my city? That you had simply disappeared?" I forced myself to meet his gaze, though it felt like staring into the heart of a storm. "It wasn't your city when I started working here. This area was Gallo territory then." A muscle twitched in his jaw, the only sign that my words had hit their mark. The territorial expansion of Castellano interests into this part of Chicago had been recent. And, according to neighborhood gossip, bloody. "You always were observant," he murmured, his eyes never leaving mine as he reached into his jacket pocket. I flinched instinctively, a reaction that made his expression darken. He withdrew not a weapon, but a cell phone. "Clean this mess up," he said into it before sliding it back into his pocket. "We need to talk, but not here." "I'm working," I protested weakly. "I can't just leave in the middle of my shift." His laugh was short and humorless. "I think your employer will understand. After all, I now own this restaurant." My blood ran cold. "Since when?" "Since about—" He checked his watch, an elegant timepiece that probably cost more than my annual salary. 4 hours ago. The paperwork was finalized this afternoon. The pieces clicked together in my mind with sickening clarity, the sudden change in ownership, the special dinner, the way everyone had been on edge all day. It hadn't been just another business meeting. It had been a celebration of acquisition, and it couldn't be coincidence. "You knew I worked here," I said, the accusation slipping out before I could stop it. Something flashed in his dark eyes. Triumph, perhaps, at having provoked an emotional response. "I make it my business to know everything that happens in my territory, Elena, including who serves the wine." The door opened before I could respond, and one of the younger waiters entered with cleaning supplies, his eyes wide with fear as he approached the mess. carefully avoiding looking at either of us. "My car is waiting outside," Vittorio said, his tone making it clear this was not a request. "I'll give you 2 minutes to collect your things." I knew I should refuse, should insist on finishing my shift and going home to my daughter, but the mention of Sofia sent a fresh wave of panic through me. If Vittorio had found me so easily, what else might he know? "Fine," I conceded, stepping carefully around the broken glass. 2 minutes. In the employee locker room, my hands shook so badly I could barely open the combination lock. My mind raced through options, each more desperate than the last. I could run, grab my things, slip out the back door, collect Sofia from Mrs. Patel, and flee the city. But how far would we get? Vittorio's reach was long, his resources seemingly limitless, and his pride was legendary. He wouldn't simply let me disappear a second time. And there was a part of me, a part I hated for its weakness, that remembered how it had felt to be in his arms, to be the focus of all that intense attention and passion, the part that still woke from dreams of him, breathless and aching. I changed out of my wine-stained uniform into the clothes I'd worn to work. Worn jeans, a simple blouse, and a light jacket against the evening chill. Nothing like the designer dresses and jewels he had once draped me in during our brief time together. I stared at my reflection in the small mirror inside my locker, at the shadows beneath my eyes, and the tension in my face. "Mommy loves you, Sofia," I whispered, as though my daughter might somehow hear me. "Everything I've ever done was to protect you." Outside, a sleek black Bentley idled at the curb, its windows tinted to opacity. A mountain of a man in a dark suit opened the rear door as I approached, his face expressionless. I recognized him vaguely, Antonio, one of Vittorio's most trusted guards. "Miss Romano," he said with a slight nod, the formality almost comical given that the last time we'd seen each other, he'd been pretending not to notice as Vittorio and I groped each other in the back of this very same car. The interior of the Bentley was just as I remembered, buttery, soft leather seats, the subtle scent of expensive cologne and power. Vittorio sat with his back to the driver, leaving me no choice but to sit facing him, our knees nearly touching in the intimate space. "You cut your hair," he observed as the car pulled away from the curb, his eyes cataloging the changes in my appearance. My hair, once falling to the middle of my back, now barely brushed my shoulders. A practical choice for a single mother with limited time for styling. "It's been 6 years," I said, my voice steadier now that we were away from the restaurant. My anger beginning to displace my fear. "People change. Some things change," he agreed, his gaze intensifying. "Others remain exactly the same." I looked away, out the tinted window at the city lights blurring past. "Where are you taking me?" "Somewhere we can talk privately." "I need to be home by midnight," I said, thinking of Mrs. Patel, who would need to sleep eventually, and Sofia, who sometimes woke with nightmares and called for me. Vittorio raised an eyebrow. "Hot date?" The casual question carried an undercurrent of possessiveness that sent a shiver down my spine. "Babysitter," I replied without thinking, then immediately regretted it as his expression sharpened with interest. "Babysitter," he repeated softly. "So there's someone waiting for you at home." I said nothing, cursing my slip of the tongue. The car continued its smooth journey through the city, eventually turning onto Lakeshore Drive, the dark waters of Lake Michigan visible in flashes between the buildings. "You told me you lost our baby," Vittorio said finally, his voice dangerously quiet. "You called me, crying so hard I could barely understand you, saying there had been complications, that the baby was gone, and then you disappeared." I forced myself to meet his gaze, to maintain the lie that had protected Sofia for 5 years. "That's what happened. Is it?" His hand shot out suddenly, fingers wrapping around my wrist with gentle but inescapable pressure. "Your pulse is racing, Elena. It always did that when you lied to me. Like that time you claimed to have lost the necklace I gave you, when you'd actually pawned it to pay your mother's medical bills." I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. "That was different." "Was it?" His thumb stroked the delicate skin on the inside of my wrist, a casual intimacy that made my breath hitch despite myself. "You've always been resourceful, Elena. It's one of the things I admired about you. Your determination to survive, to take care of your own. The car slowed, turning into the circular drive of a towering high-rise overlooking the lake. Vittorio's penthouse, where I had spent those 3 whirlwind months living in luxury while telling my friends and family I'd taken a job as a live-in housekeeper for a wealthy family. "We're here," he said unnecessarily, releasing my wrist as the car came to a stop. "My home hasn't changed much since you last saw it. Though perhaps you'll notice I finally bought that art piece you were so fond of, the one with the storm over the ocean." The casual reference to a conversation from 6 years ago, a passing comment I'd made while we lay tangled in his sheets, unnerved me more than any threat could have. He hadn't just remembered me, he had thought of me, perhaps even missed me. The lobby of the building gleamed with marble and gold, the uniformed doorman nodding deferentially as we passed. The private elevator required a key card, which Vittorio produced from his wallet, the doors closing silently behind us. As we ascended, I felt the weight of his gaze on my profile. "You're still beautiful," he said quietly. "More so, perhaps. Motherhood suits you." My head snapped toward him, eyes wide with alarm, and he smiled. A predator's smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Did you think I wouldn't investigate? Once I saw you tonight, confirmed it was really you?" He shook his head slowly. "Elena Romano, age 28. Single mother to Sofia Romano, age 5. He paused deliberately. "Born 7 months after you disappeared from my life." The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse foyer, but I remained frozen, unable to step forward, unable to breathe. "You do the math," he continued, placing a hand at the small of my back to guide me into the apartment. "Even accounting for premature birth, the timing is significant." The penthouse was just as opulent as I remembered. Floor-to-ceiling windows, showcasing the glittering Chicago skyline and the dark expanse of the lake beyond. Minimalist furniture in leather and chrome, a kitchen that would make professional chefs weep with envy. But now, instead of feeling like a fairy tale, it felt like a gilded cage. "I have nothing to say to you," I managed, moving away from his touch to put the kitchen island between us. "No?" Vittorio removed his suit jacket, draping it over a bar stool with practiced ease. "Not even an explanation for why you let me believe our child was dead?" "You don't know that Sophia is yours," I countered, though the denial sounded hollow even to my own ears. "Don't I?" He moved to a sideboard, pouring 2 fingers of amber liquid into a crystal tumbler. "Would you like me to list the evidence? The timing of her birth. The fact that you've never filed for child support or listed a father on her birth certificate. The fact that she has my mother's eyes. Yes, I've seen photographs, Elena. Did you think I wouldn't be thorough?" Fear clawed at my throat. "You've been watching her?" "Protecting her," he corrected, taking a slow sip of his drink. "From a distance. Once I confirmed she existed, did you think I would leave my own flesh and blood vulnerable? Unguarded? Living in that unsafe neighborhood in a building with faulty wiring and inadequate security? We've managed just fine without your protection or your money," I said, anger flaring. "I've kept her safe, healthy, and happy for 5 years. I've worked 2 jobs sometimes to make sure she never went without what she needed. I did that, not you, because you chose to," he said, his voice hardening. "You chose to struggle, to deny her the birthright and security that was hers by blood. You chose to lie to me, to her, to everyone." He set down his glass with controlled precision. "Tell me why, Elena. What could I have possibly done to make you believe that I would be so terrible a father that my child would be better off without me?" The raw hurt beneath the anger in his voice caught me off guard. In all our time together, Vittorio had rarely shown vulnerability, had always maintained the cool control that had helped him rise to the top of Chicago's underworld. But now there was something almost pleading in his dark eyes, a question that demanded an honest answer. "It wasn't about you," I said finally, the fight draining out of me. "Not exactly. It was about your world, Vittorio. The danger, the violence, the enemies around every corner. The day I found out I was pregnant, there was an attempt on your cousin's life, remember? A car bomb that killed an innocent bystander instead. I wrapped my arms around myself, the memory still vivid after all these years. I watched you organize the retaliation, Saw the coldness in your eyes when you ordered that man's death, and I thought, is this the world I want for my child? To grow up surrounded by bodyguards and bulletproof glass, never knowing normal, never being safe. So you decided that poverty and fatherlessness were better alternatives? He asked, his voice dangerously soft. I decided that normal and alive were better than privileged and at risk, I countered. And I'm not sorry for that choice, even if I'm sorry for the pain it caused you. Vittorio moved suddenly, closing the distance between us with a speed that made me back up until I hit the wall. He placed his hands on either side of my head, caging me in without touching me, his face inches from mine. Do you know what it did to me? He asked, his voice a rough whisper. Believing I had lost a child I never even got to see? Believing you were grieving alone somewhere because you wouldn't answer my calls? I had men searching for you for months, Elena. I thought you might harm yourself in your grief. The genuine anguish in his eyes made my chest ache. This was the side of Vittorio few ever saw. The man beneath the Mafia boss, the heart beneath the calculated exterior. I'm sorry, I whispered, and meant it. I thought I was doing the right thing, and now? He asked, his gaze dropping to my lips for a fraction of a second. Now that I know the truth, now that I know my daughter exists, what do you think is the right thing, Elena? Before I could answer, my phone rang in my pocket, the specialized ringtone I'd set for Mrs. Patel's calls. Panic flooded me anew. She would only call at this hour if something was wrong with Sophia. I need to take this, I said urgently, ducking under Vittorio's arm to create space between us. His expression darkened, but he stepped back, watching with narrowed eyes as I fumbled for my phone. Mrs. Patel, is everything okay? I asked, trying to keep the alarm from my voice. Elena, I'm so sorry to call so late, came her worried voice. Sophia woke up with a fever. She's asking for you, poor thing. I've given her some children's Tylenol, but I think she needs her mama. I'll be right there, I promised, already moving toward the door. 20 minutes tops. I ended the call to find Vittorio already shrugging back into his suit jacket. What's wrong? He demanded. Sophia's sick. She has a fever. I need to get home now. I headed for the elevator, not caring if he followed or not. Antonio will drive us, he said, pulling out his phone. I whirled to face him. Us? No, you're not coming with me. His expression hardened into something implacable. My daughter is ill. I'm coming with you, Elena. This isn't a negotiation. The elevator doors opened, and he gestured for me to enter first. As they closed behind us, sealing us in the small space together, the reality of my situation crashed over me like a tidal wave. After 6 years of secrets and careful planning, it had taken less than 6 hours for my carefully constructed world to unravel completely. And now, Vittorio Castellano was about to meet his daughter for the first time, and there was nothing I could do to stop him. The Bentley cut through the night with quiet urgency, Antonio navigating the city streets with practiced efficiency. Beside me in the back seat, Vittorio was a study in controlled tension, his fingers drumming a rhythmless pattern against his knee. What neighborhood is this? He asked as we turned onto my street, lined with aging apartment buildings and small businesses with security grates over their windows. The contrast between this world and the gleaming penthouse we'd just left couldn't have been starker. Pilsen, I answered, watching his face as he took in the graffiti-tagged walls and the group of young men huddled on a corner, their eyes tracking our expensive car with obvious interest. His jaw tightened. This is where you're raising our daughter? This is where we can afford to live, I said, too worried about Sophia to engage in an argument about socioeconomic realities. It's a good neighborhood with good people. Not everyone measures safety in terms of how many armed guards are stationed at the door. Antonio pulled up in front of my building, a 3-story walk-up with peeling paint but clean windows, and a small, well-tended patch of flowers by the entrance, Mrs. Garcia's pride and joy. Wait here, Vittorio instructed Antonio as we got out of the car. I noticed him scanning the street, his hand instinctively moving toward what I assumed was a concealed weapon beneath his jacket. No one's going to attack us, I said, hurrying toward the entrance. This isn't the war zone you think it is. The security door had a broken lock, again, which drew a disapproving look from Vittorio as we entered the small lobby with its row of dented mailboxes. The elevator was perpetually out of order, so I led him up 2 flights of stairs to the 3rd floor, my concern for Sophia making me take them 2 at a time despite my exhaustion. Mrs. Patel opened her door before I could knock, her gray hair pulled back in a loose bun, her face creased with concern. "Elena, thank goodness. She's been asking for you." Her words died as she registered Vittorio's imposing presence behind me. Her eyes widened in alarm. "It's okay," I assured her quickly. "This is an old friend. He drove me home when he heard Sophia was sick." Mrs. Patel's sharp eyes darted between us, picking up far more than I was comfortable with. "I see," she said in a tone that made it clear she absolutely did see, perhaps more than I wanted her to. "She's in the living room. I made her a pallet on the couch so she could watch cartoons." I slipped past her into the apartment, acutely aware of Vittorio following close behind. Mrs. Patel's place was similar to mine. Small, modestly furnished, but clean and homey, filled with the scent of spices and the colorful throws and pillows she loved to collect. And there, curled up under a bright purple blanket on the couch, was Sophia. Her dark curls were damp with sweat, her cheeks flushed with fever, her small body looking unusually fragile. "Mommy," she called, her voice hoarse but relieved as she caught sight of me. She reached out with both arms, a gesture she'd been making since infancy. I rushed to her, gathering her warm little body against mine, pressing my lips to her forehead to gauge her temperature. "Hey, baby girl. Mommy's here now. How do you feel?" "My throat hurts," she complained, burying her face against my neck, "and I'm hot and cold at the same time." "Mrs. Patel gave you medicine?" I asked, stroking her damp curls. She nodded against my shoulder, "The yucky kind that tastes like fake cherries." "That's the kind that works best," I said with a smile, falling into our usual banter despite the tension thrumming through my body. I was acutely aware of Vittorio standing a few feet away, taking in every detail of this first encounter with his daughter. "Who's that man?" Sophia whispered, finally noticing him. Her green eyes, so like mine, but with the intensity that was purely Vittorio's, studied him with the unfiltered curiosity of childhood. I froze, my mind racing for an explanation that wouldn't be a complete lie, but also wouldn't reveal too much. Before I could formulate a response, Vittorio stepped forward, his movements deliberately gentle, his expression softening in a way I hadn't seen since our time together years ago. "My name is Vittorio," he said, his voice warmer than I'd heard it all evening. "I'm an old friend of your mother's. When I heard you weren't feeling well, I wanted to make sure you got home safely." Sophia regarded him with the solemnity of a child assessing an unfamiliar adult. "You talk funny," she decided after a moment. A surprised laugh escaped him, a genuine sound of amusement I had almost forgotten he was capable of. "I grew up in Italy," he explained. "That's why I have an accent." "Like in Lady and the Tramp?" Sophia asked, referencing her favorite movie of the moment, "with the spaghetti?" "Exactly like that," he agreed. And I could see him cataloging every detail of her face, every inflection in her voice, searching for himself in her, finding pieces of us both. "We should get you home and into bed," I said, gathering Sophia and her blanket into my arms. She was getting too big to carry easily, but I needed the comfort of holding her close as much as she needed the security of my arms around her. Mrs. Patel appeared with Sophia's backpack. I packed her things. The fever started about an hour ago. I think it's just a summer cold, but you might want to call the doctor in the morning if it hasn't broken. "Thank you for watching her," I said, shifting Sophia's weight to accept the backpack. "Allow me," Vittorio said, taking the bag and then, with a questioning look at me, holding out his arms for Sophia. "You look exhausted, Elena." I hesitated, every maternal instinct screaming against handing my sick child to a man who, despite being her biological father, was essentially a stranger to her. But my arms were already aching, and Sophia was looking at him with more curiosity than fear. "Is it okay if Vittorio carries you, sweetheart?" I asked her, leaving the decision in her hands. She considered this for a moment, then nodded. "But I want my blanket." "Of course, Principessa," Vittorio said softly, using the Italian endearment as he carefully took her from my arms, ensuring the purple blanket remained wrapped securely around her. The sight of my daughter cradled against the chest of her father for the first time sent a rush of conflicting emotions through me. Tenderness, fear, regret, and something deeper I couldn't name. We thanked Mrs. Patel again and made our way back to the stairwell. Sophia, who normally chattered incessantly, was quiet, her head resting against Vittorio's shoulder, her eyes heavy with fatigue and fever. He carried her with surprising gentleness, his large hand supporting her back, his steps measured and smooth to avoid jostling her. My apartment was across the hall and down 2 doors from Mrs. Patel's. I fumbled with my keys, acutely aware of how shabby our home would appear to someone like Vittorio. When I finally got the door open, I hesitated on the threshold, suddenly reluctant to let him into this most private space, the sanctuary where Sophia and I had built our life together, free from his influence and the dangers of his world. But Sophia was already half asleep in his arms, and her needs had to come first. "It's not much," I said preemptively as I flipped on the lights, revealing our small living room with its worn but clean furniture. The pull-out couch where I slept still opened into a bed, my textbooks from the community college nursing program stacked neatly on the coffee table. If Vittorio was judging our modest living conditions, he didn't show it. His attention remained focused on Sophia. "Where's her room?" he asked quietly. "This way." I led him through the short hallway to the only bedroom, which I had decorated as cheerfully as our budget allowed. The walls were a soft yellow, with decals of butterflies and flowers I'd found on clearance. The twin bed had a colorful quilt made by my grandmother, and a collection of stuffed animals occupied a shelf above it. A small bookcase overflowed with library books and yard sale finds, evidence of Sophia's voracious appetite for stories. Vittorio laid her gently on the bed, his movements careful as he tucked the covers around her. She stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open. "Will you be here tomorrow?" she asked him sleepily. The question hung in the air between us, loaded with implications neither of us was ready to address. Vittorio looked to me, and for the first time since our reunion, I saw uncertainty in his expression. "Get some rest now," he said to Sophia, smoothly dodging the question. "Feel better, Principessa." Her eyes had already closed again, her breathing deepening as the combination of medicine and exhaustion pulled her toward sleep. We retreated from the room, leaving the door ajar so I could hear if she called out in the night. In the living room, the air between us was charged with unspoken words. Vittorio stood by the window, looking out at the city lights, his profile sharp against the darkness beyond. "She has your smile," he said finally, still gazing outward, "and your kindness. But she has my mother's eyes, my chin." He turned to face me. "She's perfect, Elena." "Yes," I agreed softly. "She is. And you've kept her from me for 5 years. The tenderness in his voice hardened, the hurt and anger resurfacing now that we were alone. I sank onto the edge of the pull-out couch, suddenly too exhausted to stand. I did what I thought was right. I still believe it was right. Based on what? A mistaken belief about who I am? What I would do as a father? He moved closer, looming over me. "You had no right to make that decision alone." "I had every right," I countered, keeping my voice low to avoid waking Sophia. "I'm her mother. My job is to protect her, even if that means protecting her from her own father's world." "And what about now?" he asked, crouching down to my level, his face inches from mine. "Now that I know about her, now that I've seen her, held her in my arms, do you think I will simply walk away? Allow you to continue struggling to provide what I could give her with a snap of my fingers?" I met his gaze steadily, despite the tears threatening to spill over. "What I think is that you need to leave now. It's late, I'm exhausted, and my daughter is sick. Whatever happens next, we can figure it out tomorrow." For a moment, I thought he might refuse, might insist on staying, on continuing this confrontation until he got what he wanted. It was his way in business, relentless pressure until his opponent conceded defeat. But instead, he nodded once and straightened. "Tomorrow then. I'll send a doctor in the morning to check on Sophia. And we'll talk, really talk, about how we move forward from here." It wasn't a request, and I was too tired to argue. I followed him to the door, watching as he pulled out his phone to summon Antonio. At the threshold, he paused, turning back to me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "She asked if I would be here tomorrow." "What should I have said, Elena?" The honest question caught me off guard. I don't know, I admitted. I haven't figured out how to explain any of this to her yet. Then we'll figure it out together, he said, with the same calm certainty he brought to all his endeavors. Because I'm not disappearing from her life, Elena. Or from yours. As the door closed behind him, I leaned against it, closing my eyes against the inevitable storm I knew was coming. For 6 years, I had protected my daughter by keeping her father at a distance. Now that distance had collapsed in a single evening, and I had no idea what tomorrow would bring. But as I checked on Sophia one more time, brushing a kiss against her fever-warm forehead, I knew with absolute certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. Block 4. True to his word, Vittorio sent a doctor the next morning. Not just any doctor, but a pediatric specialist who arrived at our door at precisely 8 o'clock, carrying a black medical bag that looked more expensive than all of my furniture combined. Dr. Abernathy was a kind-faced woman in her 50s who treated Sophia with gentle efficiency, diagnosing her with a simple throat infection and prescribing antibiotics, which she had already brought with her. Mr. Castellano insisted I bring everything you might need, she explained with a knowing smile as she handed me the medication and detailed instructions. He was quite concerned. The fact that Vittorio had found a top pediatrician willing to make house calls at dawn on a Saturday spoke volumes about his influence and his determination to be involved in Sophia's life. After the doctor left, I gave Sophia her first dose of antibiotics and settled her on the couch with her favorite cartoon and a popsicle for her sore throat. She was already feeling better, her fever reduced to a low-grade warmth, her energy returning in small bursts. Is Vittorio coming back today? She asked, carefully licking her cherry popsicle to avoid drips. The question I'd been dreading. Would you like him too? I countered, buying time. She nodded, curls bouncing. He's nice, and he talks funny. And he called me principessa. Her attempt at the Italian word made me smile despite my anxiety. Principessa, I corrected gently. It means princess. I know, she said with the casual confidence of childhood. He told me that in my dream. He said I was his little principessa. I froze, my heart skipping a beat. You dreamed about him last night? Uh-huh. He was in a castle with a big garden, and he was showing me all the flowers, and he said I could have a pony. She looked up at me with sudden hope. Can I have a pony, Mommy? We live in an apartment, sweetheart. Where would we keep a pony? She considered this problem with the gravity of a child faced with logistics. In the bathtub? I laughed, grateful for the moment of normalcy. I don't think that would work out very well for the pony, or for us, when we needed to take a shower. My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number, but I knew immediately who it was. Car downstairs in 30 minutes. Bring Sophia if she's feeling up to it. There's someone I want her to meet. No greeting, no signature, no room for refusal. Classic Vittorio. Part of me wanted to ignore the message, to establish boundaries from the start, but a larger part knew that this conversation was inevitable and postponing it would only heighten the tension. And Sophia was already asking about him. She's better but still recovering, I texted back. Where are we going? The response came immediately. My mother's house. Sunday lunch is a tradition, my breath caught. Vittorio's mother, Lucia Castellano, was a formidable woman by all accounts. During our relationship, she had been in Italy, recovering from heart surgery. I had never met her, though Vittorio had spoken of her often and with rare tenderness. The idea that he wanted to introduce Sophia to her grandmother to officially bring her into the Castellano family sent a wave of panic through me. That's moving very fast, I wrote. We've lost 5 years. I'm not losing another day. The car will be waiting. I sat for a long moment, staring at the message, weighing my options. I could refuse, could draw a hard line, but that would only delay the inevitable. Vittorio had found us, and he wasn't going to walk away from his daughter now that he knew she existed. If I wanted any say in how Sophia was introduced to his world, I needed to be present for it. Sophia, I said, turning to her with a forced smile. How would you feel about meeting your grandmother today? Her eyes widened. I have a grandma, like Mrs. Patel. Not exactly. This would be your father's mother. The words felt strange on my tongue. I had rarely spoken of Sophia's father to her, offering only the vaguest explanations when she asked. "My daddy," she whispered, as if it were a magical word. Is Vittorio my daddy?" The direct question caught me off guard. I'd underestimated her perception, her ability to make connections, or perhaps it was simply the instinctive recognition between blood relations, the same way Vittorio had immediately seen himself in her features. "Yes," I admitted, seeing no point in lying now. "Vittorio is your father. He's been away for a long time. But now he's back, and he wants to get to know you, and he wants you to meet your grandmother." Her small face went through a rapid succession of emotions: surprise, confusion, excitement, uncertainty. "Does this mean I get to have a daddy now? Like Maya from school?" The innocent question broke my heart a little. For all my efforts to give Sophia a complete and happy life, I had never been able to fill the father-shaped hole in her world, the absence she noticed when her friends talked about their daddies, when fathers appeared at school events, when family trees were drawn in class. "We're going to figure that out together," I said carefully. "It's complicated, but what's important is that your daddy cares about you very much. Is that why he sent the nice doctor lady?" I nodded. "That's exactly why. Now, should we get dressed for lunch? We're going to a special place." Her excitement overrode any remaining lethargy from her illness as she bounced off the couch. "Can I wear my blue dress? The one with the flowers?" "Perfect choice," I agreed, following her to her room to help her change. As I dressed in the bathroom afterward, I studied my reflection in the mirror. I chose my nicest outfit, a simple burgundy wrap dress I'd found on clearance last year, reserved for job interviews and parent-teacher conferences. It was modest and flattering, though nothing like the designer clothes Vittorio had once draped me in. I swept my hair into a neat bun, applied minimal makeup, and slipped on my only pair of decent heels. Armor, of a sort, against what was to come. Precisely 30 minutes after Vittorio's text, a sleek town car pulled up outside our building. The driver, another one of Vittorio's men whose name I couldn't remember, held the door open for us with a deferential nod. "Miss Romano, Miss Sophia." His use of my daughter's name confirmed what I already suspected. Vittorio had briefed his entire organization about her existence. Sophia, for her part, was delighted by the fancy car with its leather seats and privacy partition. "Are we rich now, Mommy?" she whispered loudly as we settled in. "No, sweetheart. This is just a special car for a special day," I explained, smoothing her dress and checking that her fever hadn't returned. She seemed perfectly healthy now, her cheeks pink with excitement rather than illness. The drive took us north, away from the city center, and into the exclusive suburbs where Chicago's elite made their homes. We finally turned into a gated community, the security guard waving us through with immediate recognition. Beyond the gate, immaculate lawns surrounded stately homes set far back from the street, each one a display of wealth and privilege. The car pulled into a circular driveway before an elegant stone mansion with ivy climbing its walls and perfectly manicured gardens extending in all directions. It looked like something from a fairy tale, exactly the kind of place where a princess might live. "Wow," Sophia breathed, her nose pressed to the window. "Is this where Grandma lives?" "Yes," I said, my mouth dry with apprehension. "And this is where your father grew up." The front door opened before we reached it, revealing Vittorio in casual clothes, dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt that somehow looked more expensive than any suit I'd ever owned. The sight of him dressed down, looking almost normal, brought back a rush of memories from our time together. Lazy Sunday mornings, rare moments of peace between his business obligations. But what caught me off guard was the genuine smile that spread across his face when he saw Sophia. It transformed him, softening the hard lines of power and control into something warm and approachable. "Buongiorno, principessa," he said, crouching down to Sophia's level. "Are you feeling better today?" She nodded enthusiastically. "The doctor you sent gave me medicine that didn't even taste bad. And Mommy says you're my daddy. And we came to meet Grandma." His eyes flickered to mine, acknowledging the revelation, before returning to Sophia. "That's right. Your grandmother has been very excited to meet you since I told her about you last night. She's been cooking all morning, all your favorite Italian dishes." "I don't know if I like Italian food," Sophia said seriously. I like pizza and spaghetti. Vittorio laughed. Those are Italian, Piccola, and trust me, your grandmother's cooking will make you love many more Italian dishes. He straightened, his gaze meeting mine. You look beautiful, Elena, he said quietly, his eyes taking in my simple dress with an appreciation that made my cheeks warm. Before I could respond, an elegant older woman appeared in the doorway behind him. Lucia Castellano was in her late 60s, with silver-streaked black hair swept into a classic updo, wearing a simple but obviously expensive dress and a single strand of pearls. Her eyes, the same intense dark eyes she had passed to her son, immediately found Sofia. Dio mio, she breathed, one hand rising to her heart. È proprio come nelle foto. È bellissima. Vittorio stepped aside, making room for his mother to approach. She moved with the dignity of a queen, but her hands trembled slightly as she reached for Sofia. Hello, little one, she said, her Italian accent thicker than Vittorio's. I am your nonna Lucia. I have waited a very long time to meet you. Sofia, suddenly shy, pressed against my leg. Hello, she whispered, peering up at this regal woman with wide eyes. Lucia knelt down, seemingly unconcerned about her expensive dress touching the ground. You have your father's chin, she said, gently tilting Sofia's face, and my eyes, the Castellano eyes. She looked up at me then, and I braced myself for anger or accusation. Instead, I saw only a deep, painful understanding. She is perfect, Elena. Thank you for taking such good care of her. The simple gratitude, so unexpected, brought tears to my eyes. I had prepared for recrimination, for blame, not for this grace. Please come inside, Lucia continued, rising gracefully. Lunch is almost ready, and we have much to talk about. The interior of the Castellano family home was as impressive as its exterior. Soaring ceilings, marble floors, priceless artwork on the walls. But unlike Vittorio's minimalist penthouse, this place felt lived in and warm, with comfortable furniture and family photographs scattered among the antiques. Sofia's natural curiosity quickly overcame her shyness as Lucia gave her a tour, showing her the grand piano in the parlor. Can I learn to play, Nonna? The library with its floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. Do you have any princess books? And finally, the spacious kitchen where delicious smells wafted from bubbling pots and a fresh-baked cake cooled on a rack. Vittorio and I followed behind them, watching this instant bond form between grandmother and granddaughter. He stayed close to me, occasionally brushing his hand against the small of my back in a gesture that seemed both possessive and supportive. Your mother is being very kind, I murmured, as Lucia showed Sofia how to taste the pasta sauce with a proper wooden spoon. She understands sacrifice for family better than most, he replied quietly. She left her own family in Italy to follow my father to America, knowing what kind of life awaited her. He paused, watching his mother laugh at something Sofia said. She doesn't blame you for trying to protect our daughter, Elena, but she will never let her go now that she's found her. Neither will I. The simple declaration, delivered without threat or anger, nonetheless sent a chill through me. This was what I had feared from the beginning. The inexorable pull of the Castellano family, drawing Sofia into a world I had tried so hard to keep her from. Vittorio, I began, but was interrupted by Lucia calling us to the table. Lunch was a surreal experience. The four of us seated around an antique table laden with traditional Italian dishes, Sofia chattering happily between bites of the best food I'd ever tasted, Lucia sharing stories of Vittorio's childhood that made him alternately smile and wince. The summer sunshine streaming through leaded glass windows onto silverware that had probably been in the family for generations. It felt disturbingly normal. Like we were just a regular family enjoying Sunday lunch at grandmother's house, not a criminal dynasty welcoming its newest member into the fold. After dessert, a tiramisu that Sofia declared was even better than birthday cake, Lucia took Sofia out to see the garden and the koi pond, leaving Vittorio and me alone at the table. This doesn't change anything, I said as soon as they were out of earshot. One lunch doesn't erase the reality of who you are, what you do. Vittorio sipped his espresso, his expression unreadable. And what reality is that, Elena? you're the head of the most powerful criminal organization in Chicago, I said bluntly. You have enemies, dangerous enemies. Your own cousin was nearly killed, remember? My business interests are diverse and well-managed, he countered smoothly. The more volatile aspects have been significantly reduced in recent years. I prefer legitimate enterprises now. They're more profitable and less prone to unwanted attention. I laughed without humor. So, you've gone legitimate? Should we expect a press release about the Castellano family's reform? Don't be naive. The world isn't divided into good and evil as neatly as you'd like to believe. He set down his cup with precision. But my priorities have evolved, and with Sophia in the picture, they will continue to evolve. Security and stability are paramount now, for all of us. All of us? I repeated, catching his implication. Vittorio, we're not a family? He finished, his gaze intensifying. That's exactly what we are, Elena. What we've always been. Whether you were ready to accept it or not, and now it's time to make it official. Official? I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. What exactly are you suggesting? Vittorio reached across the table, taking my hand in his before I could pull away. His touch was warm and familiar, sending an unwelcome current of electricity up my arm. Marriage, Elena. A proper family for Sophia. The life we should have had 6 years ago, if you hadn't run. I withdrew my hand as if burned. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. His expression was resolute, not a hint of doubt in those dark eyes. Sophia deserves to grow up with both her parents. She deserves the Castellano name and all the privileges and protections that come with it. And what about what I deserve? I challenged, keeping my voice low despite the rising anger. Do I deserve to be married to a man whose business associates carry guns to dinner meetings, whose enemies might target his family, whose idea of resolving conflict involves... I stopped myself, aware that I was treading into dangerous territory. Involves what, Elena? He asked softly, dangerously. Say what you're thinking. I met his gaze directly. Violence, control, manipulation. The very things I wanted to protect our daughter from. Rather than anger, a look of profound sadness crossed his features. Is that truly who you think I am? After everything we shared, I think it's a part of who you are, I said honestly. A part I chose to walk away from once. And a part I'm still not sure I can accept. Through the window, I could see Lucia and Sophia in the garden, my daughter's delighted laughter carrying faintly as she chased a butterfly between rose bushes. The sight twisted my heart. Her innocent joy contrasted sharply with the weight of the conversation taking place inside. Look at her, Vittorio said, following my gaze. Look how happy she is. This is her birthright, Elena, this family, this legacy. Would you deny her that out of fear? Or pride? It's not pride, I protested. It's caution. Practical concern for her safety and well-being. I can protect her better than anyone else in this world, he said with absolute conviction. My resources, my connections. Nothing would ever touch her. And what about her soul, Vittorio? Her understanding of right and wrong. How do I explain to her what Daddy does for a living when she's old enough to understand? He leaned forward, his expression intense. By the time she's old enough to ask those questions, the Castellano Empire will be entirely legitimate. I've been working toward that goal for years. Moving investments into legal businesses, distancing myself from the old ways, for the future, for a family I hope to have someday. His voice softened. I never stopped thinking about you, Elena. About the child I thought we'd lost. The sincerity in his words shook me. It was one thing to imagine Vittorio as the cold, calculating crime boss, driven solely by power and control. It was another to see him as he was now, a father determined to do right by his child, a man still carrying the torch for what we'd once shared. I need time, I said finally. This is all happening so fast. Yesterday you didn't know Sophia existed. Today, you're proposing marriage and a complete upheaval of our lives. I can't make that decision in an afternoon. He nodded slowly, accepting this small concession. Time. I can give you that. But not distance, not anymore. I want to be part of Sophia's life, daily, not just on weekends or holidays. I've missed 5 years. I won't miss another day. What exactly are you proposing then? Joint custody, to start. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box, placing it on the table between us. This is yours, regardless of your answer. Consider it a promise that I'm serious about my intentions. I stared at the box, afraid to open it, afraid of what it represented. Open it, he urged gently. With trembling fingers, I lifted the lid. Inside was not a ring, as I'd feared, but a key. A modern electronic fob attached to an elegant silver keychain. What is this? The key to your new home, he said simply. A townhouse in Lincoln Park, 3 bedrooms, a small garden, excellent security, and in the district with the best elementary school in Chicago. It's already in your name. I snapped the box shut. I can't accept this. It's too much. It's not a gift, Elena. It's what Sophia deserves, a safe, comfortable home in a good neighborhood. What you both deserve after years of struggle. His eyes held mine, unflinching. You can continue working if that's what you want. Finish your nursing degree. I'll provide for Sophia's education and any other needs. All I ask is that I be allowed to be her father, in every sense of the word. And us? I asked quietly. What do you expect from me? His gaze softened, a hint of the passion we once shared flickering in his eyes. Time. The chance to remind you of what we had, what we could have again. Before I could respond, the garden door opened, and Sophia burst in, cheeks flushed with excitement, a small bouquet of flowers clutched in her hand. Mommy, Nonna showed me the secret garden behind the big trees, and there's a fountain with real goldfish, and she says I can come feed them whenever I want. She thrust the flowers toward me. These are for you. Nonna helped me pick the prettiest ones. I accepted the bouquet, a lump forming in my throat at her innocent happiness. They're beautiful, sweetheart. Did you thank Nonna? Of course she did, Lucia said, following Sophia into the room. Her shrewd eyes took in the small velvet box on the table, the tension between Vittorio and me. Such lovely manners, a true Castellano. The casual claim on my daughter sent a jolt of possessiveness through me, but I forced a smile. Thank you for showing her the garden. It's beautiful. This garden has been in our family for 3 generations, Lucia said, her hand resting lightly on Sophia's shoulder. Someday it will belong to her, along with everything else. The weight of inheritance, of dynasty, hung heavy in her words. This wasn't just about Sophia having a father. It was about her taking her place in a family with deep roots, complex obligations, and a legacy that stretched back to Sicily. Sophia, piccola, Vittorio said. Why don't you help Nonna bring out the special cookies she mentioned earlier? I need to finish talking with your mother. Can I have one when I bring them? Sophia asked, already heading toward the kitchen with Lucia. Just one, I called after her, maternal instinct taking over despite the surreal circumstances. You've already had plenty of sugar today. When they had disappeared into the kitchen, Vittorio turned back to me. 1 month, he said. Give me 1 month to show you that this can work. Move into the townhouse. Let me spend time with Sophia. Let me prove to you that I'm not the villain in this story. And if, after a month, I still have reservations, then we'll negotiate terms that you're comfortable with. Joint custody, separate lives if that's what you truly want. His jaw tightened slightly. But I think you'll find that we're better together than apart, Elena. We always were. A memory flashed through my mind, Vittorio and me in his penthouse kitchen, dancing to old Italian music while sauce simmered on the stove. His arms strong around my waist, his laughter warm against my neck. We had been happy once, in those stolen moments between his business obligations and my work shifts, before I'd learned exactly what those business obligations entailed. 1 month. I agreed reluctantly. But I keep working at the restaurant. I'll have Marco promote you to manager. He interrupted. Better hours, better pay. No, I said firmly. No interference. I've built my life without your help for 6 years. I don't need you pulling strings now. He looked like he wanted to argue, but instead nodded curtly, as you wish. But the offer stands. Sophia and Lucia returned with a plate of delicate lemon cookies, my daughter already munching happily on one, powdered sugar dusting her chin. The sight of her, so at ease in this house, with these people who were her blood, made me realize that regardless of my reservations, Vittorio was right about one thing. He was her father, and she deserved the chance to know him. The rest of the afternoon passed in a strange domestic tranquility. Vittorio showed Sofia the treehouse his father had built for him as a boy, now somewhat weathered, but still sturdy. Lucia shared family photo albums, pointing out the resemblance between Sofia and Vittorio as a child. I watched it all with a mixture of apprehension and reluctant warmth, seeing my daughter bloom under the attention of her newfound family. By late afternoon, Sofia was fighting yawns, the excitement and her recent illness catching up with her. As we prepared to leave, Vittorio pulled me aside while Lucia was helping Sofia into her jacket. "I'll have the townhouse ready for you by Wednesday," he said. "My men will handle the moving. You won't have to lift a finger." "Vittorio," I began to protest, but he cut me off with a gentle finger to my lips. "Let me do this, Elena. Not for you, if that makes it easier to accept. For her." His eyes, when they met mine, held a vulnerability I rarely saw. I've missed so much already. First words, first steps. I can never get those moments back, but I can make sure that every moment from now on is the best it can be. The raw emotion in his voice disarmed me. This wasn't the calculated maneuvering of a crime boss. This was the pain of a father who had lost years with his child. "Okay," I conceded softly, "but I pack our personal things myself." "Some things aren't just about efficiency." His lips curved in a slight smile. "As you wish." He hesitated, then added, "Will you tell her that I'm taking her to a new home?" I nodded. "Tonight. She should have time to get used to the idea." That night, after tucking an exhausted Sofia into bed, I sat on the edge of her mattress, brushing curls from her forehead. "Did you have fun today?" I asked softly. "Mm-hmm," she mumbled sleepily. "Nonna is nice, and Daddy knows lots of good stories." The word slipped so naturally from her lips, as if she'd been saying it all her life. Perhaps, in a way, she had been waiting to say it, saving it for the man who would finally claim it. "Sofia, sweetheart, how would you feel about moving to a new house? A bigger one, with your own big bedroom, and maybe a garden like Nonna's, but smaller?" Her eyes flew open, suddenly alert. "Really? Can I paint my room purple?" I laughed softly. "I think that could be arranged." "Will Daddy live with us too?" she asked, the innocent question landing like a weight on my chest. "No, honey. Daddy has his own home, but he'll visit us often, and we'll visit him and Nonna. We're going to figure things out as we go." She seemed to accept this answer, her eyelids growing heavy again. "I'm glad Daddy found us," she murmured, as she drifted toward sleep. I always wished for him when I blew out my birthday candles. Long after she had fallen asleep, I sat in the dimly lit kitchen, the key to the townhouse on the table before me. My entire adult life had been defined by independence, by the determination to make my own way without relying on anyone else. Even before Sofia, after my mother's death had left me alone at 19, I had prided myself on my self-sufficiency. Accepting Vittorio's help felt like surrendering that independence, like admitting that all my efforts had been insufficient. And yet, looking around our tiny apartment with its leaking faucet and temperamental heating, I couldn't deny that Sofia deserved better than what my waitress salary could provide. A text message lit up my phone screen. "Just checking that you both got home safely." Sofia was tired. The simple concern in Vittorio's message touched something deep inside me. For all his power and wealth, for all the danger that surrounded him, he was still the man who had once held me through the night when I received news of my mother's cancer spreading, who had memorized how I took my coffee and made it for me each morning during those 3 precious months we'd shared. "We're home," I replied after a moment. "She's already asleep. Thank you for today." She was happy. His response came quickly. "Sweet dreams, Elena," to both my girls. I put the phone down, a complicated mixture of emotions swirling through me. 1 month to decide our future. 1 month to determine whether Vittorio Castellano had truly changed, whether I could trust him with not just Sofia's safety, but her moral compass, her understanding of the world. 1 month to see if the feelings that had never quite died could grow into something sustainable, something real, or if they were merely echoes of a past best left behind. The townhouse was everything Vittorio had promised and more. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, highlighting hardwood floors and crown molding. The kitchen gleamed with high-end appliances and marble countertops. Sophia's room had been painted a soft lavender, not quite the purple she'd requested, but close enough to delight her, and furnished with a canopy bed that made her squeal with joy when she saw it. "It's a princess bed," she exclaimed, running from one corner of the spacious room to another, examining the built-in bookshelves already stocked with children's classics, the window seat overlooking the small private garden, the walk-in closet larger than our entire bathroom in the old apartment. My bedroom was equally luxurious, with a king-sized bed and an ensuite bathroom featuring a soaking tub I could actually stretch out in. The third bedroom had been set up as a study, with a desk, comfortable chair, and shelves filled with nursing textbooks. Vittorio's acknowledgement of my ambitions. It was perfect. Too perfect in its way, designed to showcase everything I hadn't been able to provide on my own, everything Vittorio could offer with a snap of his fingers. But as I watched Sophia spinning in delighted circles in her new room, her happiness radiating like sunlight, I allowed myself to hope that perhaps, just perhaps, we could find a middle ground. A way for Sophia to know her father, to benefit from the privileges of her heritage, without being consumed by the darker aspects of the Castellano legacy. "Do you like it?" Vittorio asked from the doorway, having given us a few hours to settle in before coming to check on us. He leaned against the frame, casual in jeans and a gray Henley, looking more like an ordinary father than a feared Mafia boss. "It's beautiful," I admitted. "Thank you." "Daddy!" Sophia launched herself at him, and he caught her easily, swinging her up into his arms with practiced grace, as if he'd been doing it all her life instead of just a few days. "My room is perfect, and Mommy says we can get a fish for the study." "A fish, huh?" He raised an eyebrow at me over her head. "Just one?" "We're starting small," I said with a slight smile, "working our way up." "Well, I think that's very wise," he agreed, setting Sophia down gently. "Small steps. Speaking of which, I thought perhaps we might have dinner together tonight, to celebrate your first night in your new home." The question was directed at me, his eyes searching mine for permission. This was how it had been for the past few days. Vittorio, careful to respect my boundaries while steadily increasing his presence in our lives. Lunch with Sophia, a phone call before bedtime, small gifts appearing without fanfare, a stuffed animal for her, a rare book on Italian cooking for me, remembering a casual mention I'd made years ago about wanting to learn my grandmother's recipes. "I think we'd like that," I said, surprising myself with how easily the words came. "Wouldn't we, Sophia? Can we have pizza?" she asked hopefully. Vittorio laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "How about I cook for you instead, my mother's special recipe for gnocchi? I think you'll like it even better than pizza." As he moved toward the kitchen, already rolling up his sleeves with comfortable familiarity, I felt something shift within me. Not surrender exactly, but perhaps the beginning of acceptance, the acknowledgement that sometimes strength meant allowing yourself to trust, to hope, to believe in the possibility of change. 1 month, I reminded myself. 1 month to decide if this fragile new arrangement could become something permanent, something real. 1 month to see if the man I had once loved with such intensity could truly become the father Sophia deserved. And perhaps, if I dared to hope, the partner I had always longed for him to be. As Sophia skipped after him, chattering excitedly about her new room, I found myself following, drawn by the simple domestic scene unfolding in my new kitchen. Vittorio at the counter, sleeves pushed up to reveal strong forearms, hands confident as they kneaded dough. Sophia on a stool beside him, watching with fascination, the golden afternoon light casting them both in a warm glow. For the first time in 6 years, I allowed myself to imagine a future where we were truly a family, not perfect, not without complications, but together. A future where my daughter knew her father's love, where the man I had never quite stopped loving found redemption in that love, where the lies and fear that had separated us gave way to honesty and trust. It was too soon for certainty. The road ahead would be complex, filled with negotiations and compromises. But as Vittorio looked up, catching my eye across the kitchen with a smile that still made my heart skip a beat, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel when I walked into Rosso Scuro for my shift just days ago. Hope.